welcome to another episode of Unsubscribe, the Demand Drive podcast. I'm your host, AJ Alonso, and I'm joined by my co-host today, Alex Ellison. Alex, how are you?
I'm good. I'm actually flying out to Boston in your
That's
side of
right.
the country later today, so I'm looking forward to it.
Exciting. Airports are no fun, but flying? Yay or nay on flying? You a big flyer?
I'm a tall person. Long legs and airplane seats is just, it's not a good mix. So I don't love it, but I like going places. So the result, it's worth it.
Well, I hope your flight is seamless and not difficult in any capacity like most flights are.
Fingers crossed.
We have a fantastic guest with us on the podcast today, Becky Orr. She is the head of sales ops over at Rightway Health, which is a super exciting role that I feel like gets undersold at a lot of organizations, the operations people that make the sales team go. So we brought her on today to ask some questions about her journey, how she got into ops in the first place, and sort of her day-to-day and how that helps out the sales function overall. So Becky, thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. Why don't you give the audience a bit of background about you, who you are, and then we can kind of get into like how you got into the role that you're currently in, your journey and
Sure.
all that good stuff.
Definitely. So who I am. So live outside of Chicago. I am a mom. I have two young boys, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Found my way into B2B sales from retail. So biggest part of my career was in retail. I ran a store that was a very high profile store for a company that doesn't exist anymore. It's called BB. They do exist online. You can find them in like TJ Maxx and Marshalls.
I recognize the brand. Yeah.
Okay. So, but they don't have they don't have actual stores anymore. So I got sick of retail because I didn't want to work weekends and holidays. And I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? My friend's husband had just gone to a wellness company and he needed BDs. And he's like, it's entry level. You're going to have to start over, but we can take it from there. So I did it. And then, I went from there as a BD to sales operations, moved to a different company, doing business development, like a director of business development, went to another company, sales analyst, and then I was a BD in sales operations again. And now here I am finally at Rightway, doing as a director of sales operations. So my husband jokes because from BD to now, all of the companies that I've worked at, most of them have either had the word right or the word well in the name of the company. So he has no idea where I work. He's always like, where do you work now? Because they all sound the same.
That's really funny.
You just work for Rightwell.
Well, right.
I'm like, it started at well, right?
I just honestly, I didn't even know. I was just like, oh, right or well, right, well, sure.
No, well, right was the first company after retail. Yes.
That's funny. So you made the jump. I feel like that's a classic story at this point. Like a lot of people are coming into the sales or business development role from like other industries. Like they were like bartenders or they were in hospitality or whatever. They don't have sort of that like fresh out of college, jump right into the world type experience. Right. So you made that transition in, and then you went up into operations, which I feel like is a non-traditional path for people to take, right? They kind of rigidly, a lot of companies set you up to go from SDR to AE and then further down into some type of sales leadership after that. What made you want to pursue operations as sort of your next step? Was it like a natural inclination of yours, or did you like really respect the ops people that existed already at your first company?
I think just natural for me. In my career in retail, one of the things that I was really focused on was the operational side of the business. So I had sales managers in retail that were really focused on the sales side, and I was always doing the operational thing, like training in my district for operations. So for me, like I kind of knew when I went to Wellwright that I didn't really necessarily want to do outside sales. I enjoy selling. I like the sale. I like talking to people and getting to understand what their pain points are and how we can help them. But I am not a fan of closing. Like I don't like chasing people to sign the contract and like all of the negotiating. It's just not my jam. So it just kind of led me to operations, I guess, because I was like, I'm not going to do outside sales and I don't want to set meetings for the rest of my life. So like, then what is next for me? And so I kind of found myself fixing their sales force and trying to figure out how to like make slides better for presentations, and how do we work with marketing, and what are we going to do for conferences. So I kind of just like created that path for myself.
Very cool. So I feel like I had a somewhat similar path, and Alex, maybe you did too, but just on the marketing side of things, where like I also loved the concept, or like ethereally the idea of sales, like being able to talk to people, find out their pain points, understand how we can help you. But like the actual sales portion of it, I was like, like not for me. Like all of the stuff that leads up to it, great. But like closing somebody, or even like the act of booking a meeting, I was just like, it felt very forced in a lot of cases, where it was like, if you had to follow a script, or if this was like the prescribed next step. I just enjoyed talking to people. But for me, it kind of led me into the marketing direction, because I still do a lot of that. I still talk to people, figure out pains and challenges where we can help, but I do it through content rather than like speaking directly to somebody. I feel like, Alex, you probably had a similar experience, or like the reason that you kind of moved into marketing was somewhat similar.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people in the SDR role for 6 months to a year start to think about, like, what do I like about this? And for sure, a lot of people are like, yeah, sales gonna either like an account executive or an SDR manager. Those are like kind of the obvious directions to move, and the jobs that you're exposed to the most, like the paths you're exposed to the most. But yeah, for me, it was a similar thing. Like, I like communicating with people. I like crafting a message and sending it out. I didn't like the responses, and the one-on-one conversations were less interesting to me than actually like crafting that piece of content, that email, like the subject line, like putting that stuff together was interesting to me. So I could tell that I was like, okay, this is more of the marketing side of the SDR role. So let's explore marketing further and see what happens there.
I find it super cool that you were also able to kind of carve out your niche within the organization that you were at too, where it was like recognizing that there were areas of or opportunities of improvement where it's like, oh, we can do this better within our CRM, or like, oh, our event strategy here can be improved in some way. And like, as an individual contributor within the organization, you could lend a hand to help out with that, and start to realize over time, like, oh, this is actually just a job that people have, right? Like, this is an operations role. What kind of goes into like your day-to-day now? Like, let's define, I guess, operations for our audience. What do you do on a day-to-day basis outside of fixing CRMs and helping people with their event strategy?
Meetings, lots of strategy meetings with marketing. So a lot of what I'm doing is working with marketing to kind of bridge the gap between marketing and sales. I think everybody understands there's always that like not weirdness, but like everybody, marketing's like, oh, sales, they're annoying, and sales is like, marketing won't leave me alone. So I'm kind of like the gate. Yes, it's always that like everywhere. But I have a really good relationship with marketing, every company that I've been at. So it's easy for me to kind of bridge that gap and make it easier for so I understand a salesperson's brain, and I know why they don't want to do things or why they want to do things. So I try to like figure out how to make the messaging work for the sales team on why they need to do what marketing is asking. And then marketing has so much great content and collateral that they put together for the organization that it just makes sense to figure out how to take what marketing is doing and turn it into like an email sequence for an SDR to use instead of rewriting everything. That's just like where I've found the best success. Use what marketing's already created to have a successful campaign coming from the SDRs, rather than always asking marketing for more stuff. I feel like we just need to adapt what they've already got. So a big part of what I'm doing is working with marketing outside of CRM. It's a lot of working with, it is tied to CRM, but not necessarily. It's just like working with other departments in an organization to see what they need out of CRM, because it's not just a sales tool, but maybe there's a department that needs visibility. And so we need to create a dashboard so that they can see what's going on within their department as it relates to opportunities that are in the pipeline or what's coming, so that they know how to better staff their department. One of the companies I worked at was manufacturing. So if we had a lot of like customer complaints or cases, things that we had to fix, just making sure that there was a really good dashboard within our CRM so that that department could see what they were doing. So CRMs, they work well for everybody. So a lot of my day is working with other departments to see what we can do for them. And then it's really making sure that processes are easy to follow, right? That they're not more detailed than they need to be, but they're also up to date. So like you can go into any company at any time and you can ask for a process sheet, and either it doesn't exist or it's like 5 years old or it's wrong. So it's just a matter of like, you have to be in that department in the operations mode to like constantly be finding process documents and making sure that they're up to date.
Yeah, and I think that's to touch on something you just talked about. I think that's cool that you're able to work with sales and marketing so successfully. Would you say that, like, say you had started just in operations and hadn't been in the SDR role, do you think you still would be able to communicate between them as well? Or was that an important part of like learning how both departments kind of operate?
I feel for me like it was important because so when I first left retail, the company I worked at, well, right, it was a very small company when I started startup, but there were probably 25 or 30 of us. So there was like one marketing person, there were like 2 SDRs, and like there was like departments of one. So we had to go to trade shows together and just like really figure out what the pain points were so that we could figure out how to better put it together. So I feel like having that experience and having that kind of, you know, be my guide for like how to work with marketing going forward really helped, because it helped me to understand the pain points that marketing does have, because it's not like a glamorous job all the time. Like there are like things that you guys are stuck doing that you maybe don't want to do, or you have to like work late to put together a presentation that maybe already exists, but sales didn't know how to tweak it, right? So it's just a matter of like, I don't know, I think it's just like you said, I think it was easier because I already knew like what I would need as an SDR and what marketing needed from sales. So it just helps me to have those conversations more easily.
I feel like that's pretty natural too, right? Because like you're saying now that your operations role, you are that bridge between the two departments. Like you're you provide the transparency required for the teams to like work effectively together. And a lot of organizations say that about the BDR and SDR role, right? Like they kind of sit in between both of those departments, and maybe they roll up specifically to sales or to marketing, but both departments have a vested interest in making them as successful as possible. So you went from like being that bridge between the two departments as a BDR into being that bridge between the two departments, but from an operations level. And then you kind of pull in everybody else, like you were saying, if it's customer success or finance or whatever other department might need access to or visibility into the stuff that marketing and sales are doing, that's you. You're like that connector between everybody else. I think it was just yesterday someone mentioned it to me that like a lot of times you can explain the role as like very octopus like you have these tentacles that reach out and you can pull in like all of the different departments into one sort of like centralized look, right? And that's so difficult at some organizations, maybe not at Wellright where you had 25 people. It seems like it's pretty easy to corral everybody, but at like a bigger company, that's a daunting task to have to imagine being responsible for all of that.
Yes, definitely.
One of the things that I know and I've heard a lot about recently is this idea of like SDR enablement. The fact that there's a dedicated individual there to help SDR teams put together effective cadences or make sure that they're up to date on the most exclusive tools they have. What is the difference between that role, like an enablement role, and what you're doing on the operation side of things?
Right now, I would say not much, right? Because so we don't have like a true enablement right now. So that is like carved out. It's something that we're looking to potentially add probably next quarter. And we're trying to think through what that means. So for us, I would say I'm probably the person that's creating these sequences and the cadences and the tools that we're using. And then working, like I'm trying to make them as easy as possible so that like if we go to a conference and we come back, all you have to do each time is replace the conference name in it so that it makes sense. And And then just working to have a few of those sequences, like this is a new prospect. They're going to go through this one. I've reached out to them X amount of times. I'm going to nurture them. Now they're in MQL. So we're going to do this. So right now that's kind of me trying to figure it out. But the goal is to have that sales enablement person, and not each, but we would have, an SDR and a sales enablement person supporting a group of outside sales reps with their needs. So I would imagine that role to have more hands-on, like in the outreach tools that we're going to be using to tweak those email campaigns. I'm just like afraid of I don't know. Part of me wants to let the SDRs do it themselves, but then I'm like, I don't really want them to go rogue and who knows what they're going to put in there. So I'm like, maybe, we'll see.
you want to give them the opportunity, right? Like I know for sure when I was an SDR, giving the opportunity to have more responsibility around stuff like that was great, because it was I'm proving myself. But yeah, definitely the opportunity for me to go in there and just ruin everything you've put together already. And it's just well, that was a huge mistake. So it's a tough line to toe.
It is, because you can't really measure the success or failure of your email sequences if you're not all sending the same message, right? It's hard to know what's working and what's not working if you've got 5 people using something different. But yeah, I think the goal would be the sales operations side would be in CRM, pulling reports, doing the grunt work of that side of business, like dashboards, reporting, tying together the proposal unit team with the sales team in that. And then the sales enablement person would be more of fine tuning the sequences, putting together collateral, helping, the outside salesperson with slide presentations and their finalist decks and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to dive a little bit, since you brought it up, into CRMs, because they're the bane of a lot of salespeople's existence. And AJ and I have experienced this plenty, but as marketers, we'll put something in there and then salespeople do nothing with it. Right? There's a lot of things that happen or don't happen in CRMs to cause friction, conflicts, things like that. So I'm curious, because obviously you deal with it on a day-to-day basis. Are there any best practices or strategies that you've found work really well to get people on the same page, not only with what they're doing outside of the CRM, but within the CRM, and making sure things are documented the right way?
A well-written email from the CEO telling them that they have to use CRM works wonders. No, jokes aside, it's hard because I always find myself in the process document. If I'm writing up how to create an opportunity or how to do this with a lead, I'm always finding myself at the top of that document putting in CRM is the Bible. If it doesn't live here, it doesn't exist, and it's if you want to get credit for the opportunity, it has to be in the CRM. So I think it's just a matter of really repetitively telling the sales team, get it in CRM, but also making CRM an easy tool that you would want to be in. I think there's a lot of companies that really overcomplicate it. And as long as you can figure out a way to get the complications out of the way and make everything easy, it should be easy to explain why we have leads versus why we have contacts, and when to use a lead and when to use a contact. It should be second nature. And then this is what you should fill out on an account page, just making it really easy. And so that it also speaks to your business, because each CRM, obviously out of the box, they're all the same, right? And you can do modifications to make it work for you, but it really should work for your company and how you guys are perceiving sales and what your sales process looks like. So I think as long as you're doing that, it makes it easier. But yeah, I think it's just a nice little report each day that they can log into and see maybe where they need to be. But that's just how I feel. I think if you can keep practicing with them also, you have to just do mini trainings, but the main thing I would say is just making sure that your CRM is set up for your organization and not a complicated process.
Yeah, that's, I think, the most daunting thing that I remember thinking about Salesforce, which is a CRM that I have the most
Right.
experience with, was that like there are a lot of different fields or checkboxes that I just don't need, but like still
Yeah.
exist on the pages that like I'm entering data into. And it's like analysis paralysis, right? Like, do I have to do
Right.
this? What fields are required? For someone fresh out of college in a sales development role to get thrown into that, it can just
Yeah.
paralyze you immediately.
It's not fun. I remember being at a company and like we went to so many trade shows, and every time we came back from a trade show, there was a list for the BDs to work. And there were like, I want to say like 26 steps to like,
It's a
when
whole
you,
alphabet, Becky.
yeah,
That's A
like
to
to
Z.
open, right. It was like, I'm opening this lead. I'm going to decide if it's qualified or unqualified. Do I need to reach out to them? Do I not need to reach out to them? There were like so many reasons about why they would be qualified or why. And I was like, I don't want to do this, and I'm sales ops. Like, this is not fun for me. Like, there is no way that you are going to convince a BD to like do all of these steps. Like, we need to like blow this up and start over. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think
Like,
you're
what a
right.
headache.
Simple is best in a lot of cases, and I'd
Yes.
rather have 2 steps than 26 steps.
Right. I'm like, it should just be like yes or no and keep going.
Do you think that so like if you go into an organization as an ops person and like there is existing CRM in place and they have processes and they've been using it, and like you've come to the conclusion that maybe it's not the best process after a few weeks of being there, and you see like where there are pitfalls or like where there is dirty data that could be updated, like I feel like you have this eyeball test at this point that you can probably
Yeah.
go in and take a look at a CRM and be like, oh, this needs like tweaking.
Right.
Where do you see, I guess, like the biggest areas of improvement for if you
Mhm.
go into any company? Like if we wrote a blog about this a long time ago, but Taffer, the guy who does bar rescue, like if he
Mhm.
were a Salesforce consultant or a HubSpot consultant and he walked into your
Yeah.
CRM, like what would he immediately shut down? There's like common answers, I think, that a lot of companies tend to fall into. What do you see as being the biggest areas of improvement for any CRM?
I think it's adopting leads versus contacts, right? Like, there's a lot of companies that want to not use leads, especially in Salesforce, because Salesforce, it just makes it like they kind of like live out there on their own and you can't connect it to the account. So I think like out the gate, like just really defining if you're going to use leads, if you're going to use contacts, if you're going to use both, and like just wrapping your arms around whatever you've decided and like figuring out how to like move forward with that. And then the other thing that I see a lot of is like the opportunity stages sometimes don't make sense to like the salesperson. So they're never really sure like when to move it to a different opportunity stage. And like, or they get stuck in a opportunity stage for a long time. I feel that there's like some sales reps that are afraid to like mark something as closed lost because they think it's going to count against them. But most organizations that I've worked at, we don't really, there's no metric tied to like closed won ratio. It's really, you're just being like held accountable for what you're winning, and not like it's that, yeah, like yes, it's not great that you lost it, but it's not like one of your KPIs is your closed won ratio. So I think just really focusing, like the big things for me is like the whole like leads to contacts headache and like why the opportunity stages are what they are and making those like easy and digestible.
I think that the opportunity stage one really speaks to me because that's like you're on the operation side working pretty closely with sales leadership then in that case, where it's like, why did you define these the way that you did? Why do these
Right.
percentages exist? Because you're right, that does like matriculate into reporting. It goes into like, well, our lifetime value is now off because like people aren't updating the statuses correctly, or like the sales cycle number is significantly higher than it should be because these leads sat in the wrong status for 350 days. Like
Right.
it all kind of spreads out from like these little decisions that salespeople maybe are nervous to do or don't do at all because it's not easy for them. I feel like your relationship then with sales leadership has to be pretty tight to make sure that like all of this kind of goes according to plan, right? Like they know what they want, you know how to execute on it. How does it actually all come together? So
Right.
talk a little bit about your relationship with like sales leadership in terms of how things just get done within the organization.
Right. Yeah, I mean, for me, the main thing for me with sales leadership is having the dashboards set up the right way within the CRMs that we're using. And then it's like, I've always been in the position to, when they have like a quarterly board meeting, that I am having to put together these slides for like the VP of sales, or, you know, the VP of graphics if I was at the manufacturing company, or the VP of marketing at another company. And that's like where I connect the most with sales leadership, is what is the story that you need to tell out of our data that we have in our CRM, so that we can put it together and having those conversations. And then from there, it turns into, well, like, what kind of initiatives do we need to put together from a sales ops perspectives to make the data look better next time, right? Like, what can we do? And then that ties into the rest of the departments as well.
Nice. Yeah. And diving a little bit deeper into that, or maybe just more specifically into sales development, and your relationship with those people. Obviously you started in the role, so you probably know it even better. But when it comes to bringing on a new SDR, getting them up to speed on all those things, what is sort of that, building that relationship like, and how do you make sure that someone who's new to the team is able to pick up all the, you know, different steps in this process or strategies that you guys use?
I think for like new SDRs, BDRs, it's really important that they sit on a lot of sales demos with different sales people on the team, because everybody has a different way of selling the product or describing the product. And I think it's really important that they hear different sales styles and sales techniques, because it's going to help them to figure out how they're going to talk if somebody ever picks up the phone when they're cold calling them. So I think like a main point for me with sales training for an SDR or BDR is just like listening to a lot of demos, getting mock demos from different people on the sales team. It's hard, like there is no, at least at the companies I've been at, there's no like user manual that you can go through and say like, oh, well, this is what our, you know, product does for sure, and this is what it doesn't do. Like, you just kind of have to know it, because we're in tech and it changes from time to time. So I think it's just a matter of them really listening to the sales demos, and then getting them trained on the tools that we're using. I'm a big, like, I will train a new person on how I use the sales tools and how they work best for me. But I really think like there's so many tools now that they have like the university section of their like portal, or the education section of their portal, and they have all these webinars and like live trainings that you can sign up for. So I think really making sure that they're taking advantage of that so that they can learn. And then the other part is just really making sure that they understand who our ICP is and who we're selling to, what we are selling, and why like the person that you're prospecting needs it, so that they can better understand what they're doing. So I think like whenever I'm looking for a new SDR or BDR, I always tell people like, I either need somebody who like knows all of the tools that we're using and they don't know anything about our industry, so I only have to train them on industry, or they really need to know our industry and they don't know any of the tools we're using, and I'll just train them on the tools. But if you don't know either side, like that's going to be a hard one.
That's funny. I feel like you oftentimes get one or the other anyways, right?
Right.
We joked about this on a different episode of this show, but we ran an event a couple of years ago where like we were talking about how sales development reps usually come in, it's entry level. They don't have a ton of experience. Maybe they've done the job for 6 months at a different company and you're bringing them on as an SDR and like a lateral move. But generally it's someone's like first point of entry into the world of SaaS. And there are companies out there who are like, oh, like we're hiring SDRs and we want them to have 3 years of experience. And it's like, yeah, there's like 7 of those in the world, right? Like you're not going to find somebody with your industry experience and they know all of the tools that you use, and you can just plug them in and get them to go. Like you need someone in a role like yours to be able to take someone who doesn't have everything that they need and build it for them through training and onboarding to get them ready and up to speed. Would you say that like for you, onboarding is something that, I guess I'm asking like crucial wise, scale of 1 to 10 for any organization that looks at like their sales training and onboarding process? Usually it's like a week of training, you get up and you go on the phones and that's it. How crucial do you find onboarding for your organization? And then like, how would you grade it on a scale of 1 to 10, as in like you can get a week of training and hit the phones, or 10 is like these reps need at least a month of like really dedicated knowledge transfer before they can see results.
Yeah, I mean, I think the training is crucial. So I would rate it higher, like 9 to 10. I don't think that there is like a clear, like day 1, day 2, day 3, this is what you're going to do. I think it's more like the first few weeks. And this is like taking from this organization in my last one. It's like the first few weeks, we're going to take you on a tour so that you can get to know all the different players in the company, the different departments, start to learn our language, our value proposition, like our voice, our marketing stuff, and really like figure all of that out. I like to point the SDRs to like the marketing folder. Like I really want you to like just go out there and like eat up all of the marketing collateral that we've ever had. Like every blog post, read it. Like every time that we've had like a client spotlight, a member spotlight, like really read all of that, because that's going to help you get trained. And then from there, it's like, then I start with the tools. Like this is how we do email sequencing. These are the tools we use to find people, to find their email addresses. And then it's like, do you feel comfortable doing this? Like it's harder now. You know, like pandemic, you can't post pandemic, everybody's remote now, like no matter what. So it's like harder to train people, I feel like, because you're not sitting next to them and you can't just like pop your head over into their cube and be like, how's it going? You're like, how am I going to do this? So I'm a big like person. I like to have co-working where even like you block time, and even if we're not doing the same thing, like at least we're working together, because I can see your face and you can see mine. And if you have a question while you're like going through something, you can ask me. I think that's like a really important aspect of it, because it makes it feel more personal. So once they feel that they're ready, like I feel like with a BDR too, you kind of, it's like when you're teaching somebody to swim, at some point you just got to like throw them off the edge of the pier and see what happens. And that's kind of how it's like, boom, go. That's kind of how I feel with like the BDR SDR role too. At like some point you just got to like push them to do it. And I mean, what's the worst that can happen? The person on the phone tells them, no, leave me alone. I mean, that's going to happen like 100 times a week probably anyway. So like, at least you can get used to it right away.
That's true.
Yes.
I'll tell the story because we put it in a blog, so it's public information. But we had a symposium internally where we were talking about confidence and how important that is for SDRs, right? Like, sure, you can push them out of the nest, but like, if they are confident when they're doing it, they're loving the push. But it takes that like first real slap in the face to like fully understand what you've got yourself into. And one of the SDRs that was speaking on the panel, she said that early on in her career, a prospect told her to suck eggs on the phone live to her. And she was like, what? Like, what? Like, that was the lowest of the low. And she's like, at that moment, I knew that like that was as bad as it was going to get. Right. And if that was the worst it got, then I can do this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I've had somebody in BD days tell me that I was like cyber stalking them. And I'm like, this is my first email to you. What are you talking about?
Some people.
Like cyber stalking. I sent you one email, like it'll be okay. If you don't want me to stalk you anymore, there is an unsubscribe button on the bottom of this email. Please click it.
Man. Well, I wanted to wrap the conversation up. I think we've touched on a lot of really cool things that you do on a daily basis in terms of like helping the overall transparency of an organization, making sure that everyone's on the same page. If you could sum up, I guess, like sales operations in one succinct sentence or way to describe like how important and vital you are to an organization and why somebody in the SDR role might want to take that path, how would you do that?
You know, I feel like the sales operations role is where a lot of other departments just come to for answers. Like, even if you don't have all the answers, you're kind of like that, like growing up, I'm sure everybody has that one family like on the block where their house is like the fun house that has all the nice snacks in the pantry and you can watch cartoons even that your parents won't let you watch. I feel like sales ops is that family. Like, we're the people that like, we have the good snacks, we will let you watch the cartoons and all of that stuff. So we're the like the safe haven for other people. You come to us to kind of just like ask the questions that you can't find from within like the sales team or the marketing team. And we kind of know where, if we don't have the answer, we at least know where to point you. So I think it's kind of like it's a gratifying job. Like, it's nice to be able to like help people. And I think that's why I find myself here, is because, again, I'm not a closer. I could if I needed to. I don't like it, but I do like helping people. And I think that's why I always find myself in these roles, is because I want to make sure that everybody can do the things that they need to do. And so I just like supporting that.
That's a fantastic answer. And now I'm thinking about Saturday morning cartoons.
I just want snacks.
Yeah, I want some snacks too.
know.
Jeez.
I blame my parents, because we were that house. We always had the pantry filled with the cookies and the fruit roll-ups and the jugs of juice. And so, yeah, they made me this person.
They turned you into the sales ops professional you are today.
I guess so, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Becky, it's been a pleasure having you. Thanks so much for shedding some light into the sales ops role and how it sort of works within an organization. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about sales ops Rightway, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Becky Orr on LinkedIn, or I think LinkedIn. My email address is on my LinkedIn, but that's the best way to find me. I answer all my messages, as long as I'm not trying to be sold something really crazy.
Good caveat there. You don't want anyone to just reach out and start
I don't need another
you.
financial advisor. That's
well, thanks again for hopping on the show.
Of course, thank you for having me.
This has been the Unsubscribe podcast. Remember to subscribe to Unsubscribe. Get more sales development tips and insight in your inbox, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Unsubscribe, the Demand Drive podcast. If you want less of those nasty unsubscribe emails in your inbox, go ahead and check out some of the content we have to the left, and make sure that you subscribe to Unsubscribe to keep your SDR team in tip-top shape.